Hi guys, welcome to Creative Bugging Daily with the Crafty Chatters. My name is Nancy. I'm here with Lucy and Heidi. We run a video on ADL-TV, a video series where we talk about crafts, and we decided to do a daily challenge together from Creativebug, which is a service that the library has a subscription to. It's free to make an account if you have a library card, and we'll link the website in the description box. But we wanted to talk about our experience with this 30-day challenge and how we liked it, what we did and didn't like, and the kind of experiences that we had. The challenge that we chose to do is called 30 Days to Living a More Creative Life with Courtney Cerruti. It was very fun. And we took a lot of different things into account when we were picking challenges. We wanted something that would be a good beginner intro and also had a small supply list. So we wouldn't have to be going out and buying a lot of stuff in order to do the challenge. We didn't want it to be cost prohibitive. So we did this over the month of July. So we're recording now in the beginning of August. And I think the way that we're going to do this, we talked about going through each day and kind of sharing our experiences with each day, or just with the ones that we wanted to highlight.
I just have the ones that we had highlighted.
Yeah, I think we all had some favorite days or some things we wanted to take out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the ones I think that we all had good experiences with, or we all wanted to touch on, was first day's challenge was called Blind Contour, and then the second day's challenge was Daily Observations. And these were ones I think we all said that we were finding ourselves doing consistently over the month.
I think she encouraged that as part of the practice to do that regularly, and that kind of comes out of Linda Berry's book Syllabus, where she has that, like, when she would have her students, like, you do these, like, lawnmower going by. Yeah. Okay. So what was it? 6 things you saw, 6 things you did, and 6 things you overheard.
Yep, I can actually show, because I marked
6 things you overheard, or just 1 thing you overheard?
It's one thing.
6 for each, if you could. You didn't have to make it 6, but that was kind of the idea.
We did realize it was hard to overhear things, though.
Well, these days I'm socially, or physically distancing isn't what we're calling it now, not social, right? So, yeah, I wasn't, as I go on walks, I'm like not overhearing what people are saying because you're edging away.
Yeah.
Right? So,
yeah. Well, we talked about also some of the stuff that we were adding in for things that we had overheard were lines from movies, quotes from podcasts, audiobooks, because we're all included. We did get, there were some things that I wrote down, or like Zoom calls with friends, or even things that we've said on these crafty chats. I've jotted down a couple things that were funny or that I enjoyed. So it's, we've been improvising quite a bit. And I think that was kind of the spirit of the creativity of this.
Right.
And the daily observations, I'm a regular bullet journaler and planner. This also helped inspire and motivate me to actually write things down every day. Because I kind of gotten into a rut with my bullet journal of like, I just don't really want to do this. And it did really, really help to be doing that every day. Kind of helped me center in days where I was most anxious. So that was very fun. And then the blind contouring was just, I thought I was going to be terrible at it. And I think I've already shown these on a crafty chat, but so folks have seen a blind contour. You draw a picture without picking your pen up off the paper, and that's my cat.
And without looking at it.
And without looking at it.
Yeah.
So that was very cool. And I did enjoy doing that. And I did a couple of other ones in my planner. yeah, I liked it. It was really fun.
We should show ours, I guess, too, Lucy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Here was I did. It's like this, like cat sculpture thing.
Oh my God, I love his whiskers. The biggest whiskers ever.
Let's see, I did it was like a picture, and there's this is a stone vase with a feather in it, but actually you'll see more about that later when I talk about collections. And then I went back and I added some color just because I had at this point this new set of paints, and I was like, day one, I want to use these. So
yeah, I was itching for the first week to use my watercolors.
I know I
was really excited about that, actually.
One thing I wanted to add about the daily observations, like I definitely didn't continue to write down 6 things I saw, but I do, like I take a walk every morning, and it has changed I wish I had pulled some of these photos up, but it's changed where I look and what I'm looking at and what I notice. And so I just take pictures of like all kinds of stuff on my walks now. And I think we were talking about this in a Crafty Chatter, maybe after, where people have painted stones and planted them all over the place. And it's just like little treasures, or even just like weird mushrooms growing on trees, or I saw a skunk crossing sign one day, like things I would have come home and written down, but at the time I just took a picture. So I guess there are more, it's like being mindful of the observation. There's more than one way to record how you're being mindful, but she did plant that in my brain, definitely, of like, what am I seeing? So I enjoyed.
That was really cool.
That I got that out of that.
The challenge is working.
It
is.
It's
so
sticking.
I guess we're gonna try to work chronologically through the days. So the first one that we kind of had on our list was day number 5, the urban rubbings. Or at least that was one of mine. I don't know if you guys.
I have some I can show, but if you want to show your photo, do you have them as photos, or you just have them to show?
I do. Here we go.
I felt constricted by my, I didn't take paper with me on a long walk, so.
No, I didn't. I was walking somewhere.
Oh, no.
This is a brick wall. We did, and my husband Greg and I did these together. So he was like, yeah, let's do lots of colors. So that was fun. Actually, we made it like a fun kind of a date walk, actually, because then we ended up taking a walk later in the evening, just downtown. And I think a lot of these are going to be like manhole cover.
I have one. Yeah, that's what mine are.
That one was kind of cool, I thought, that he did.
Oh, wow. See, I did mine in one color. I love that you
too. I love the multiple colors.
Thank you, Greg.
I didn't think about doing that.
So that was really inspiring. I'm like, oh, I'd love to do that somehow, some way more. Or it's fun too for if you're doing a journaling or altered book, it's like a really great ad of just
Yeah,
that would be interesting to do. Yeah, to take that and do something on top of it, if you had a block printing thing, or I'm not sure what kind of ink you could do, although you could paint, because it would, if you did those in crayon, you'd get kind of a resist.
Yeah. Or you could do the pencil, and that way it wouldn't resist as much. Yeah, so there's a lot of options. It's like, wow, I mean, this is like a totally basic craft, but I mean, it is. It's like, you do this when you're a kid, but also I remember reading in a fiction.
That we've all probably been doing all our lives, right?
Some fiction, I don't remember what years it was, but it was like they didn't have photography. They didn't so her and her friend, they would as mementos, they would always do a rubbing when they went somewhere, and they had this book of rubbings over the years. So it's like, how cool. When you're, especially if you're on vacation ever someday, instead of just having photos,
that's a great idea.
Having those rubbings, I thought that would be really, so I got super inspired.
Yeah, I could put mine in a book, I did a little collage, but that's kind of what you could do if you were doing them all over the place.
It looks like watermelon.
It does look like watermelon. That was what I did too. I collaged mine. Well, kind of.
Yeah, that's what I did too. So it's like the same, but I love that idea of doing them wherever you are, where you travel.
Journaling, yeah. And she was writing down where it was and all that, so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I do have in that backpack that's ready to go by my door.
Oh yeah,
a couple of crayons and some paper, but I just need to go somewhere.
Yeah.
That was one of the only days that I didn't go outside. So I was like frantically trying to find things in my apartment that I could do rubbings of, and then 2 days later I realized that I could only find 4 things, and then I was looking around later that week and was like, well, there's 6 more things that I could have actually used. I was just frantic at the time of like, I don't have a lot of time to do this. I got to do it. So there were some days where I felt time constrained.
After a while, as we got into the challenge, like I didn't always do the challenge on the day. Just,
Neither did I.
I wasn't in the mood, or I just couldn't get to it. So it's kind of like, that's okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's go on to becoming a collector. And at first I was like, I don't collect anything, but I discovered, yeah, you do. I came up with something, but let's talk about you first.
We're crafters, we collect everything.
Well, I mean, but I was like beyond just paintbrushes and, something that's interesting that are objects. So, Lucy, you definitely had this one on your list. So I guess.
Yeah. And it was again, like you, I'm like, I don't collect, like I used to collect birds' nests. I think I have one left because they deteriorate, although I did get a tattoo of one, so then I have that permanently. But it's sometimes it takes a looking around to be like, wait, I do have collections. Like that's a collection. So one thing I do collect is like, and I'm picky, but is feathers. I'm going to share these photos. Hold on. And then I also have these stone vases, which you can kind of see right here.
I love those.
Which I have gotten in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, and that's the only places I've seen them, but I haven't, and so then I have those and I just keep the feathers in them. This is not where I keep them. I keep them on a windowsill, but it didn't work well to take a picture. Here's a close-up of one.
Wow.
Those are so
actually, there's a couple feathers in there.
I used to emulate in my pottery after a while. I was making stuff that looked like rocks that were like stone vases. So
and what the perfect pairing is that I love these stone vases. So that's just a detail of one of the feathers. But
beautiful photo.
That's a gorgeous black and white photo, Lucy.
Thank you.
Well,
that's the thing is like, I think, a lot of people look at feathers on the ground and they're like, oh, it's kind of dirty, but it's like you can wash your hands. I don't know. There's so much interesting detail.
I remember as a kid, somebody said, "Oh, that's from a diseased bird. Like if it fell out, the bird is sick."
Yeah, I had people telling me that and it's like to the point where I don't pick up feathers because I'm worried about like what the people I'm with are gonna say. Because I used to pick up feathers constantly when I was growing up, and like I'm gonna reiterate this. I love peacocks. Like that's just like I have tons of. There's a vase on my wall over here. There's another one in the living room, and there's one in the bedroom, just filled with peacock feathers because they're gorgeous and I love the colors. But no, I've like the structure of a feather is really pretty, and I find that really aesthetically pleasing. Yeah. So I do a lot of drawing and doodling of stuff of feathers.
Yeah, they can have so many different colors in them, and also they can't just be diseased. I mean, birds they can't keep all the feathers they always have for their whole life.
They don't want you to pick up stuff when you're a little kid.
No, they don't. Or parents are worried about like.
I don't see my parents, like my dad especially, he's got like hawk feathers, and so he's just always. I think I get this from both my parents. Like in fact, my mom yesterday was like, "I'm sending you some rocks I found."
Yeah.
From New Hampshire, she's sending me New Hampshire rocks because I don't get to go. So, so that was my collection.
Yeah. I had this one was really fun for me because I've always been a collector, and like when I was going back when we were thinking about our SP16 episode, and then with this, my earliest memory was taking over my grandmother's stamp collection after she passed, and then rock collecting with my mom over the entire course of my life. So everywhere we would go, we would pick up pebbles and just had boxes of them at home. And then for me, the biggest ones are the crafting supplies now. So let me screen. Here's the first picture of That's all of my yarn and all of my fabric. That's when I said my cabinet was full, my cabinet is full. Like, and then the one that I did for this project was because I had just gotten done revamping my crafting space. One of the things I realized that I wanted was a way to display all of my trims and decorative borders and stuff. I had these bags of wooden spools, so like there are three shelves in the middle where I wound all of those trims onto spools so that I could actually sit and see them. And then just stuck some yarn up there because that's the next project I want to do. But and that was really fun, and that was a good way for me to kind of rethink how I'm organizing my crafting, because that was when I was redoing the crafting space, I was like, there's a lot of this that's not working for me. I need to be able to see my supplies. So I was trying to do that in a way that made sense with what I had at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay, that's better.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. That was,
yeah.
When it was also like I could make lists of like washi tape, all the DMC floss I have, all the pens and markers that I have. I have an obscene amount of stickers and Post-it notes in all different shapes and sizes. And then the tickets and ephemera that I keep of things that Chris and I do together. So like date night stuff. I keep those kind of things. So that one was the first one where I was like, well, shit, I got this in the bag. Like, that's done. So, yeah.
Well, so what I figured out, dawned on me, is that I collect records. And I've been doing this since I was probably, 15 or 16. We used to go out to the record stores, and go through and just buy records. My husband definitely has much, much more. I don't have a photo, but I probably could take one of, like, we have, I think the bookcases are probably at least 7 feet tall. There's 2 of them, and they're full. So it's like 6 shelves of,
wow.
I don't know how many. I've never counted. But sometimes, anyway, I'm just going to start showing something. Like, can you see that? Is that showing up okay?
I can, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So,
that's cool.
Like, it's just, sometimes it was like the album art. Like, at the time, I didn't really know who Syd Barrett was. And somebody said, oh, he was in Pink Floyd. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay, well, I don't really like Pink Floyd, but it was a different Pink Floyd. Like, like this Camper Van Beethoven, it's like they made like, it's like, these are all like stamps. So they kind of were like,
that's so cool.
So I just loved the artwork of them. This one's fun. It's, needlework, embroidery.
Wow.
That's cool.
So, yeah, so sometimes it's like buying records, which is even just more for like, what's
they
on.
look.
Love this guy, the Picasso drawing, I think.
That's cool.
Picasso. Yeah, so.
I was over at your house for a barbecue one summer. I think it was 2 years ago. And I remember going inside your house. I was like, that is so cool. Like, your wall of records is really cool.
This is one of my favorite
ones.
I
love that.
That's really awesome.
It's just all these. So, yeah. So I was like, oh, I do collect stuff. and they even are, sometimes they're on display in the house, because then there was something about like doing, objects with intention.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think I'm skipping ahead, but I kind of feel like the way you did your spools of yarn and thread, it's kind of like how you do use your collection with like
you do
intention.
Yeah. And that was one of the things you mentioned when we were talking about this. There were some points in the challenge where I was like doing things that come up later and without even realizing it. And that was one of them for me, was the redoing the spools. I was like, well, I just hit 2 of them. So
or like there's one for pressed flowers. And I was like, well, I'm actually working on a program for pressed flowers.
Perfect.
Yeah. And some of them, I think you realize, like we've said, like the collections, like you actually do anyway.
But I guess it's like bringing
awareness, the creativity in it, and so it's like you need someone to point it out. Like, oh, that is creative. How I have, some front-facing records, or how I chose to display my trims.
It's just too, like she said, like the observations, like noticing what you're doing. That is how you live creatively, like so that you're not just going through and like you're not just doing it. You're aware of how you have intentionality. I guess intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, so still kind of. Oh no, wait. Next was We're only on like our third one. I was a read a picture book.
I thought this was really cute. Again, I have several withdrawn picture books of all of them are cat related. So this one is, I don't know what to call my cat, and I thought it was hysterical because one of the cats is actually named Nancy.
Oh.
The little pink bow on her head. So I was pulling these out of my shelf and flipping through them, and one of the images in this book really kind of stuck with me of like, that's adorable. It was, she was trying out names for her cat and giving them a different food bowl with different food inside of it.
Oh, I love it.
And I was just like, that got me thinking of like, what would be in my food bowl?
Oh yeah.
Of like, what would I pick? And this was my food bowl.
Oh, I love it.
So this was actually kind of hard because I was like, I don't know what all I can put in here. So there's apple pie and sushi and honeydews and peaches and strawberries and pizza and tacos and cupcakes. All of my favorite foods. And there were a lot of foods that I couldn't put in there, like chicken tikka or spaghetti or stuff like that. Because I was like, well, I can't put a bowl inside of a bowl. It would be like bowlception. But this was the first day that actually got me drawing.
That's so cool.
And that was really, really fun to do. So that kind of kicked off a creative moment for me of, I'm going to actually draw. Like, it's actually what I'm going to do. So I really enjoyed that day. It was very fun.
Yeah, I like the way you took that too, like beyond just reading a picture book, like I don't know.
Yeah, that day I felt like the impetus of like, I should be drawing something.
Yeah.
So it was fun. I liked it a lot.
That's cool.
All right, so now we can talk about Collect-A-Color. And
yes,
you sound like you're ready for that one, Nancy. Why don't you just keep going?
Okay. So this, full disclosure, this Collect-A-Color that I did, I spent a lot of these. I think a lot of these challenges were really meant to be like shorter blocks of time. I spent almost 6 hours on this.
That's amazing.
Color Zentangle doodle thing. This was so much fun.
Yeah.
And really frustrating at the same time. So I took every single one of my supplies, markers, colored pencils, crayons, Sharpies. There's a couple of metallic pens in here that are purple, and everything, and just went crazy with it. So that was, it was also hard because I ran out of patterns to doodle. So I had to like get onto Pinterest and do a bunch of extra research of like, what can I put on this to fill literally the entire page? But I just love how it turned out, to the point where I was like, I want to put this on my fridge.
Yeah, I love it. That's really cool.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
that was really fun. I did enjoy that a lot.
That for me was another day where it was like unintentionally I was doing the project. Because we work in these vestibule shifts where you're pretty much seated at your computer and you can't really do too much, I feel like, other computer work because you're trying to watch for people coming in. So I was like, well, I'll work on an embroidery. And, I do those, my like meditative drawing embroideries.
Yeah.
I'm doing a single color. And so it just happened that day that I was like, well, I'm going to work with yellow. So this is like one that I had been working on.
Oh, that's so pretty.
And it was so funny. I had just started, it was like we went out for a walk or something and came home and I was just like, I'm going to do the next one in yellow. Like, I'm going to work in yellow today. And then all these other yellow things kept coming up that day too. So it was just like, I ended up journaling about it. And it was like, because my husband doesn't really like yellow, so we don't have a lot of yellow in the house. Like, he likes yellow flowers, but like if you're wearing like yellow shoes, or like when we moved into this house, like all the walls were painted different kinds of yellow, and he was like, this has to go. Like, he liked the house otherwise, but not the yellow. So it was just kind of funny that anyway. And then what happened, I guess my little experience with that is I was on a Pinterest and I accidentally like opened up an image further of a Lisa Congdon drawing, and then it like took me to some other page. It was about illustrating Gertrude Stein's poetry in a book called Tender Buttons Objects. And there was this quote, and it's Gertrude Stein, so it's difficult to read grammar. Enthusiastically herding a clouded yellow bud and saucer, enthusiastically, so is the bite in the ribbon. I don't know. It's a very complicated sentence, and I had found a yellow leaf, so I like glued it onto the book.
That's really awesome.
Yeah. So that was my experience with yellow. It was just kind of like one of those things where, well, it just kind of happened. So,
That's cool.
yeah, it was fun. So it's fun to kind of let those things play out some days too, you know? It's like, anyway. Lucy, did you want to talk about Collect a Color? Do you want to move on to your indulgence of magazines?
I'll move on. I did not do a very good job at Collect a Color. I got out like some green pens. It just was, I was lazy that day, and I was like, And I even put a green Post-it like in my sketchbook to remind me to come back to it, and I haven't yet. So
yeah, there's several that I was like, I'm gonna come back to these.
Yeah, I will talk about
me too.
Indulging in magazines. So there's the day when the prompt for the day is just to indulge in the stack of magazines. Like she suggests going out and buying yourself the stack of magazines and just giving yourself the time to look through them. And she shows some of her magazines. She has a French home decorating magazine. She's got some this cooking magazine. And initially, when I was watching that day, I thought, well, that's just not realistic for so many reasons. Like we can't really go out to a store right now and buy magazines, but also that's very expensive. And she maybe subscribes to them, but still. But then I looked at it another way, and I thought, well, I'll request some magazines from the library. And so I requested titles magazines I used to look at a lot. Like Architectural Digest, and I took pictures of the ones that I did. Let me see. Like I got a copy of Architectural Digest that has Ryan Murphy's fancy house in it, and I got A Living, Etc. And I was lucky in that like a bunch of them came in, like 4 maybe, and where I indulged was just I brought them home I went and picked up my holds. I sat outside with a stack of magazines in my lap, and I just gave myself the time to look through them, and it was just like I loved it. I don't know. It just taking the time to focus, like, kind of reframed how I looked at other things again, and it led me to like a place where I was placing objects with intention. Like just, I think that you might get a magazine or get a hold of it and just flip through it, but the idea of sitting with them, that's what I took to be indulgent out of her idea of indulge in magazines. Like I don't think always give ourselves the time to just fully relax into something like that. And I just was reminded of like how much I loved those kind of magazines. Something like Architectural Digest, even the ads are beautiful. And I loved, like I used to work in interior design a long, long time ago, but I loved being reminded of all the fabric houses that it's just, so it was a really kind of a cool journey down memory lane. And also just the idea that I can give myself this time and do this. And so I don't know, it sparked something in me.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to buy magazines. So.
Yeah, I was talking about that earlier, of like magazines are now as much as a paperback book. I was kind of surprised about that. I was like, oh, expensive.
And then also like, I feel like you finish them too. The thing is, you finish a book, but if you go out and buy a bunch of magazines, then you have a bunch of magazines. So you either have to figure out how to recycle or reuse or give to someone else. All of those are good options, but it just, I was glad to get a stack from the library.
Yeah. Yeah, that. I had several that have been withdrawn, all travel magazines, and that was very fun to sit and flip through those because I had been meaning to make collages out of the pictures for a really, really long time. So I made a collage on that day of some of my favorite pictures and like two of the different issues that I had, and then ended up using a bunch of the ads for the found word poem.
Oh, that's cool.
Later in the month, so I was like, well, I already cut these all out, so I can just use those. So it was great.
That's perfect.
All right, so I want to see your self-portraits.
Okay.
Okay.
I did not do this one. I did sort of do one that was like a contour drawing, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's what mine is. Mine is more of a for sure.
I'll share mine first.
Yes.
This challenge blew me out of the water. I could not believe how good, like, I'm really happy with this.
I would be. That's amazing. Yeah.
And I just could not believe how well it turned out. And it took me maybe 15 minutes.
Did you do it from a photo, or did you look at yourself in the mirror?
Just looking at myself in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Just sitting with a mirror in front of me on my desk and just drawing.
Wow.
And it turned out so well. And
15 minutes?
15 minutes. Yep, I timed myself. That's all it took me.
That's wow.
I was very happy about that.
I would be. I'm impressed.
I'm doing this. This thing. So it was very fun.
I just did one that was blind contour because I wasn't brave enough. But again, like I've done self-portraits like way back in college and stuff, but I kind of love
really cool
because it's blind contour, you know. But my favorite part about doing this was when I was doing it, my husband and son were also both sitting at the table, and I had like my phone propped up and I was doing it. And so then I did then I did, it's not a self-portrait, but then I did my son, and he does not look like that at all, but right now he's got really long, crazy hair, and he just thought it was hilarious. So then they both started doing them of themselves, their own self-portraits. And so it just became this moment of like so much giggling and cool. Everybody doing self-portraits. And so, you know, those things, I don't think they have to happen just like organically. I don't think I could have told my 17-year-old son that I wanted him to sit at the table with me and do blind contour self-portraits. He would have been like, no. So for me, that was like, I liked the portrait, but I loved the experience.
And the family moment.
They had so much fun doing it too, that they were like, we should do this more. You know,
that's cool.
Yeah. So we'll see, but it was great.
See, and it's not about the doing; it's about making it that part of life, right? Living creatively.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, all right. So now, I'm sure you're both very good at this. I did not do this. Place objects with intention, because if anything, I'm trying to remove objects because our new cats, especially Simon, who is just. Yeah. So,
I did. Did you do this, Nancy? Or
you both, I think, mentioned it in your selections.
Okay.
Place objects with intention. Yeah, that was and I kind of already talked about this a little bit because that once I realized that I had kind of already done that with the trims, I kind of stopped there, because there was a lot that I could talk about of like redoing the crafting stuff. You know, organizing my yarn stash, which I've done like 3 times over the course of quarantine just because it's fun and I enjoy it. And then like going through my bookshelf, and I purged a ton of stuff off my bookshelf and really carefully replaced everything, reorganized it, and like a lot of old paperwork and stuff. So I found myself consistently doing that over quarantine, because this is the first time that I've actually had time to do it. And that was really, really helpful to actually take care of that now while I have time instead of later. So
this one I did. I mean, I guess I kind of always place objects. Well, like I don't like clutter, but I do. You know, as you've seen, like I pick up feathers, and I do sometimes find stones, and I have. But I'm very careful about where I place them, like in my house. But you know, and I don't let my collections like go crazy. Like I might have 4 of something somewhere. So I think it's something that I already do. But I actually did do what she did, and it came out of that day of sitting outside and reading magazines. And I was looking at this old basket that I've had since like before I was married, and I brought it everywhere, and it somehow ended up outside. And I thought, you know what, that would be really cool if we hung that on the wall. We've been looking for a place to put, like my husband likes to have drinks in these glasses that belong to my grandmother. And it makes sense to have them right where he keeps like his bar stuff. And so I was like, why is that basket sitting outside? That's, it's too nice to sit outside.
Yeah.
I had plants in it at one point, but so we hung it on the wall.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
And he put his glasses there, but then and then there's like a wine opener and, but then I had these, I was like, well, let me make it even, so I put I'd made these felted bowls a long time ago, there's me playing with color up there. And this is a Voodoo Doll that we bought in New Orleans. But I love the way it looks hanging on the wall. And I kind of got that idea directly from her, where she was like hanging this box, there it is at another angle. So we can change what we put in it, but I think her particular challenge helped me again to see that, you might already have something that you can move somewhere else and move things and place them with intention. So I replaced things, I guess.
Lovely.
And I like the way that turned out. And I probably wouldn't have done that, if not for this challenge. So
great.
It turned out great. That looks really awesome.
Thanks.
Okay, so these are all the ones I didn't do. Make a map. I don't know why, I just was not, it didn't appeal to me somehow. I don't know. I think I was just...
I loved this. Again, another one of the things that I really, really love is maps. I've done several embroidered maps. I've never drawn my own. But, like, my first instinct with this challenge was, like, unconventional maps. So I was thinking a lot about, since at that time I was purging a bunch of my paperwork, and one of the things that I was going through was a lot of my old New Age books and resources and stuff, and I ran across all my palmistry resources because I used to be really interested in palmistry, and I was kind of like looking at those of like, well, that's kind of like a map of your life in some regards. So I did a very detailed drawing of my palm and like the lines on my palm, and that was very, very fun. It was hard looking at my hand and then drawing it. It was weird. And then I did a floor plan of, this is one thing that Courtney did in her video, was she did like a floor plan of her house. So I did a floor plan of the house that I grew up in.
That's cool.
And then where I really went crazy with this, so I did like 3 maps because I was so excited about it. One of our staff members, Emily, did a quarantography video earlier in quarantine, where you map your quarantine. And I had been intending to do that. So for this challenge, I ended up doing it and spent a lot of time on this. This is a good 3 or 4 hours of work. But like naming things and coming up with like what my countries would be and how things would be organized, like that was so much fun. And then coloring everything, I did really, really enjoy that.
That's amazing. That's beautiful.
So, yeah, I had 5 main areas. Was Isola is like the peninsula of isolation of like quarantine, and then Natura was we do a lot of walks outside, and that being outside and being in nature was something that was like a really big core of my quarantine, kind of helped me keep my sanity. I wasn't sure how I was saying this. Createa something was more like the creative aspects, and that was where the fiber islands came in. For all of the different fiber things that I do.
I want to go to the fiber islands.
I want to go to the fiber islands too. I was like, I want this to exist. And then the 2 that aren't named were the one in the middle with the really big river was my connections with people. So like all the Discord chats and the Zoom calls and work and, kind of when I was interacting with people from a distance. And then the upper area with the comfort weld was my area of distraction. So like Netflix, things I'm watching online, podcasts, YouTube, stuff like that. So that was, I loved that challenge.
That's
that
also
was
a really cool document that you now have. I've like heard and read a lot about the fact that we should be documenting our quarantine experience in some way, because even if it seems mundane when you're in it, that it's historical. So you might want to go back at some point and see what you were doing. And so you have done that, that's really cool.
And that was one of the things when I was thinking about doing that map of like kind of kicking myself a little for not documenting things more and not being more transparent with how negatively it's affected me.
Yeah.
I tried to stay really positive and tried to kind of go with the flow and be like, well, this is the new normal. But there have been a lot of really, really down moments in quarantine where I've felt horrible. And I haven't been really transparent, even like in my own journaling and my own planning of like being really clear of like, sometimes this is very hard and it's not easy. So I've been trying to play catch up with that a little bit of going back and filling some of that in.
Yeah.
For posterity's sake, I guess.
Yeah. That's good. I did do a map. I didn't put it on my thing, but I just did an island that we used to go to.
Oh, that's really pretty.
In New Hampshire. When I was little, we spent a lot of time, like we'd canoe over there to this beach. But the reason I wanted, you can't really see it, but up here there's this rock and it looks like a turtle. And it's called, it doesn't really, we called it Turtle Rock, and it's stuck up out of the water and it kind of looks like a turtle. I did it bigger than like anything. I did it bigger than the cabin in the map, and I did it bigger because like for me, that was when I was little, like that was what we did there. We would go over, and then for some reason the water was darker and deeper and colder at Turtle Rock, and it was more fun to like jump off Turtle Rock than it was to swim on the dock. It just was very much like a exciting part of my childhood, and now I see it and I'm like, really? But so I was trying to do a map of how I thought about going to this island when I was little, not as I know the island to be now. So it was, I mean, I didn't spend a lot of time on it. It was just fun to think about. Trying to hold on to sometimes how you think about something versus how you know it really is. So
yeah, that's a really great idea. And it's kind of picking up, like my brain's picking up on different things that you're saying of like, wow, that would be, I want to do another map of this and another map of that. So it's like, it's inspiring me to do other projects, which is.
Well, I also think you create kind of like a story map, like, cause I have to do some storytelling in my job. So it's like, you can just pick a place. Like I remember Laura, the librarian, talking about this, like just pick a place and kind of draw a picture of it and see what stories come out of that, like a place from your memory. And so it's like, if you do something from your childhood, you might have a story. Oh, I have a story that I remember happened over here on Turtle Rock. I remember we did that, so it's just interesting to think about.
Yeah. That would be a great way to write a biography.
Yeah. That would be a really interesting biography.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a cool idea. All right, so then the last one we have, day 27, or no, not last one. We have found word poem, or that I kind of surprised myself that I enjoyed doing. I spent a lot of time on it.
I enjoyed doing that too.
It was funny because the night before we were going on a walk, and like somebody had a table of books, free books, just give them away. And there was like a lot of them were like chemistry textbooks, but then there was there was one that was like a cosmology book.
I think I walked by that same house.
Oh, really? Were you in my neighborhood?
There's a crossover and walk around.
That's funny. Okay.
It's like a table, and then they just had stacks. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Like we found a Wendell Berry book. It was pretty exciting. Nice hardcover.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But anyway, so I had happened to find that book, so then I didn't want to cut up the actual pages yet. I wasn't just ready to do that, so I just photocopied them and.
That's smart.
I think it's a great idea.
So there is my poem.
Wow.
And it's kind of like it got long. Like I kind of feel like it could have been separate parts. Anyway, and I don't know what it really.
I mean, it's really good.
You think so? I don't know. It was like, like some of it I'm not exactly sure. It's a little bit dark. Yeah.
It's hard not to be dark sometimes, like.
It is.
I love that.
And I felt like narrowly intimated metaphor. It's a good thing I'm not trying to read this out loud.
Cavalier killing, hyphenated. That's an interesting word. Like,
yeah, it's an
I
old
like.
book too, because like
I
ancient was
can
spelled
tell.
antient. They didn't have. It was kind of
uh-huh.
so.
Oh yeah, ancient chaos. You broached fossilized ancient chaos. I love that. Yeah, I think this was really fun and something that I might do more of, just because it allows you to create something, but you don't have to come up with the words yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to still do something more, on the page to decorate it, but eventually, so.
Well, I had the magnets, the found poetry magnets, and I had like a nature set when I was in college. My biggest memory of those is other people's sets where they just use them to write dirty poetry, and it's just like that's very boring, and I'm really tired of that. So I would like come up with these really, really awesome, inspiring found word poems, and it was just like I love those, and I never documented any of them.
Yeah, that's
It's just like that was stupid. Why didn't
mixed up again?
Yeah, but then I did, like I mentioned earlier, I did mine off of the magazines.
Oh yeah.
And this was very fun. I did really enjoy that. It was harder than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I agree.
And
I'm glad I had like a 4-hour shift where I just sat there with it, moving around the words and because it took me a long time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And it was it was funny to me, and this was also kind of like an exercise in marketing language, because almost all of the ads had exactly the same verbiage, like used almost exactly the same terms and the same verb. So it's just like almost no originality, and there was also a certain aspect of like affluency to some of the words in the marketing they really use. Like they're assuming that they're folks that are upper class or upper middle class. Because it was a lot of just like escape and explore and like these things that you have the money and the time and the privilege to be able to actually like immediately go and do these things. So it was an interesting kind of thought exercise for me, which kind of got a little dark. Actually, it was like, this is as much as I would love to be
positive and encouraging though at the same time. Like it goes, so it's kind of like. Yeah, stay, explore. Like, don't.
The poem came out really positive. My mindset when I finished this was really dark, which I was not expecting. So I went through like the full gamut of emotions when I was coming up with this one. But it was it was a really fulfilling exercise, I think.
Yeah. I like that. I have one. Oh, here it is. Okay, so I took an old. My daughter, just moved, so she went through a bunch of her kids' books, and it was like it was really roughed up mythology book.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of like what I came up with, although it's not.
I like it too.
Cheerful. Worst tough roots with this, and save me. Yeah, I guess it's not very cheerful.
Well. That's poetry.
But it is like, if you think about the fact that I took it from a book of mythology, and I should see. Let me see if I still have it.
I struggle with poetry. I always have. I go back and we did poetry units in high school, and I ended up saving a lot of the poetry that I did. And it's just like I look back at it and I'm like, God, this is terrible.
I think this was from Persephone, and. So if you think about that, like,
oh yeah,
that's like the pages I cut up, so it kind of works that thematically.
It's totally consistent with Persephone myths.
Yeah,
it's a great interpretation. Then, that's cool.
But I approached this thinking I don't want to do this, and
that was how I approached
it.
I don't know about you guys, if you had like extra.
I was a little hesitant. I mean, I kind of did some of it when I did the altered book challenge, but that was different because I wasn't moving the words on the page. So it was like the opportunity to play with it more. But I was like, okay, there's a few of these I have kind of skipped over. You got to do this one. You can't keep being like, no, I don't want to do. No, it's like the whole point of the challenge is to like put yourself in and do things that are not. It's a challenge. It's not comfortable. Maybe it's not what you want to do. It's like it was kind of like being a student, basically.
Right. This is my homework for today.
Yeah, it's like I had to. Sometimes I did really have to approach it like that. As much as I was enjoying the challenge, at times it was like, no, buckle down and do the work and see what comes of it. Like, don't be judging it ahead of time or deciding what it's going to be. So
that was the hardest part for me too. Was actually just setting my brain aside and just doing it, just buckling down and actually putting pen to paper. And that's. I'm glad that you mentioned Syllabus by Linda Berry. I started reading that the last 4 days of the challenge. And that was kind of when everything started to click for me. Was like, okay, no, it is actually about doing it every day, sitting down, putting in the work, and like, and making that commitment to yourself of, this is actually going to benefit me. I don't know how it's going to benefit me, but it is good for you. And
I want to do some of the things that she has in the syllabus, like the one where she, like, her students did a self-portrait every day. Like, you have, was it 2 minutes or 1 minute to like draw something?
Yeah.
Every day.
And that, like, I want to do the coloring with crayon that she does, where you color as hard as you can with crayon. And because I have a big roadblock about crayon. I just don't. And she talks about that in the book of, like, adults, you hand them a crayon and a lot of them start to get really uncomfortable of, like, this is not for me. Or the idea of, like, people who haven't drawn since childhood, getting them drawing again, and, like, the magic of that. There's a lot of, like, your adult brain that's very combative, and there's a huge wall for a lot of adults. And I don't consider myself, like, a creative blocked person. I still with the thought of that, I still struggled with it of, like, maybe this isn't for me. I was like, no, it's, and then I did it and it was fun. So
it's also fun. Later in the book she talks about how crayons are just the worst medium. She's like, they're terrible.
Yes. That was
find out why.
Oh my god.
I really don't like the smell of crayons. It's a problem.
So I guess the last one I had, it's funny. At the bottom of my notes, I did do a self-portrait years ago, and I meant to bring it out, but I only want to note that she said something in there, like, it didn't have to be, like, literal self-portrait. Like, a self-portrait can be a collection of things that you feel represent you.
Yeah.
So when when I did it years ago, it was in a pottery class, and we had to do this, and I, like, sort of did a sculpture. Didn't really look like me at all, but I ended up, for my head, I went on a walk and, like, got impressions of different things along the way, and, like, I had one of my cat paw prints, just different things that, like, at the time I felt represented me, and, like, put them all on that was my, anyways. So
she did talk about that a couple times of, like, self-portraits are not always a picture of yourself. They're really more meant as, like, a stamp in time of how you see yourself and like your mental image or your thought image of yourself at that point in time. And that kind of, like, keyed a lot of different ideas in my head of, exactly how we look at identity and how you define yourself, and the things, like the physical things that can be connected to your identity. And, like, the amount of anthropomorphization that we do for everyday objects, like my phone. Like, this is an extension of myself. Like, this is entirely, whoops. I turned on the rain noises accidentally. So, like, that kind of stuff of, I could draw a picture of my phone, or, like, the case on my phone is, or, like, the bag that I use. It's interesting to think about how much physical objects are an extension of yourself.
Yeah.
So.
And that's so I guess I wanted to mention that because that did really resonate with me, and just in general, where she's like, this is all about, this whole challenge, just opening up to, like, being aware of your observations, how you're interacting with things on a daily basis and that kind of thing, because we just get on that autopilot. And it's even weirder now because you don't have that, like, get up, I got to go, I got to drive in my car, take the bus, get to work, do all the things, and not even, it's almost like it's outside of yourself until you get back home into that place where you are, but now we're like, it's all in one place.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what to say about that. But
yeah.
Well, I think we're good to wrap up, like, on this. Okay.
Yeah.
We went through a lot of days. that we really enjoyed. I mean, I think we all collectively enjoyed all of it, but those were just some things we wanted to highlight and share with everybody.
And I think we would all say that we felt, or I don't know, I don't want to speak for you, but that like it did shift our perspectives a little bit, at least in the space and time that we're in right now, you know. I think what we've talked about today is indicative of that, you know, that once you realize like, oh, I'm doing that, or I did that, or not seeing that the way, you know, I think.
Yeah, I definitely feel that it made me more mindful and cognizant. I struggle with mindfulness because it seems very, like you have to write everything down.
Yeah.
And it's very like pen and paper heavy, which isn't really possible every hour of the day.
No.
But these were like little things that I could remember or that I could like doodle or draw throughout the day, and that was much, much more helpful to actually participating.
Yeah.
And then it was the motivation that it was creating for me for other things. It was like once I would do one of these activities, it would be like, oh, okay, well, now I'm ready to tackle this other project that I've been putting off for months. So I think it really helped in a lot of different areas, and I'm probably still figuring that out. But
I know, I hope I don't lose. Well, I mean, I hope that I can continue to build on and do that. So
I had the same concern. I was like, I don't want to lose some of this. I don't want to lose the momentum.
Yeah, I know. That's why we're gonna jump into another 30-day challenge, right?
We are, yeah.
And we decided our next one is going to be watercolor lettering. Is that what we're?
That's right.
Towards? Okay.
But the watercolor lettering will be different for us because I think it's more a daily, like actual brush to paper kind of thing.
Yeah. This one was a little more engaging with yourself and the introspection, and without getting too heavy though. Like the other, like the gratitude journal would have been a lot more. A lot more work.
I think that one would have been a lot more investment.
Like you can document your days in different ways, like your little doodles and things like that. It's like I would remember that day. Like when I look at that rubbing that says storm, it's like I totally remember that moment, you know, without having to written anything else about it. Would I remember that walk otherwise? Probably not. So yeah, just little things like that. That's cool. All right. Well, I guess thanks for joining us through this ride. Ride of living creatively.
If you've made it to the end of the video, thank you. This was a long one. We did talk a lot, so but we hope you enjoyed it. And we will post another video when we have finished with the watercolor lettering. Feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, check out some other stuff that staff have done in Creative for videos on AADL TV, and enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you later, guys.